Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here. Welcome back to Camp Create. This is the last session of the summer and today is the last day of camp. I know, super sad, but we're going to create one more activity today. We're going to definitely encourage you to participate, and like we've said all week long, if you participate in all of the crafts this week, you will be eligible to win the grand prize. And don't forget, if you missed it, we did have a special campfire edition of Camp Create, and if you check out that video, there's an exclusive giveaway in that video, so make sure to check that out. And without further ado, let's jump into the last craft for this session of camp, and that is shadow stamping. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some solid image stamps. I'm going to be using these florals from the Flashy Floral stamp set, and I've taken a piece of persimmon cardstock and I've cut it down to slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. And I've just primed my stamp with the palm of my hand. A great way to make sure a clear stamp stamps really well is to kind of rub it on the palm of your hand and then to add your ink directly on top once you do that. And I've added some pigment ink to this stamp. So I use Sweet Tooth pigment ink and I've stamped it directly onto the card panel. And then what I'm doing is I'm taking the persimmon dye ink and I'm stamping the exact same image a second time directly over the white, and I'm offsetting it a tiny bit. And what this is doing is it's allowing the white pigment ink to show through the dye ink stamping that we are doing on top, and it's also showing the edge of the dye ink, which is making it look like we have shadows kind of being created when we're doing this stamping. I really love the look of this. I just think it's a neat look. The white really adds to it. It's kind of unexpected. It's a little bit different than regular stamping, and it's a great way to stamp on darker cardstocks when inks don't show up as well. I did add the accent stamping onto the images as well, and I was originally doing that with Coral Crush ink, but I found as I was adding the stamping that it was just too light. It wasn't showing over top of the white pigment ink and then the dye ink on top. So I did change and did the rest of the accent stamping with the persimmon ink as well. And I just continued to fill in the area until I had a design that I liked. So I repeated the process the exact same for every stamped image. I stamped it in white first, then I stamped it in the persimmon dye ink directly on top, but slightly shifted a little bit, and then I stamped the accent piece with the persimmon ink directly on top of the image. Once I had all of the flowers and the leaves stamped, I decided to add a little bit more detail and use the small paint splatter from the Distress Pattern stamp set. And I'm just stamping this kind of in some open areas around the leaves and the flowers. And I'm stamping it with the white ink, and I'm not doing any additional stamping over top. So I'm leaving these completely white. And you can see there I got a little bit of smudge of the white pigment ink on my card base. That's one thing that will definitely happen if you're not careful. Pigment ink is very wet, and this card will take a little bit to dry, or you will want to heat set it with your heat gun. Now, once I had the stamping done, I was ready to put my sentiment on. So I'm using this Thanks die from the Thanks and Hello die set, and what I've done is I've just die cut it directly from white cardstock. I don't want any additional color on this card. I just really want to play on the white that we did in the shadow stamping and really make that sentiment pop against the persimmon cardstock. So I cut this out of white, and now I'm going to adhere it directly onto the card panel, and I'm going to layer it a little bit over some of the stamping that we've done on the card. Now, I find it a little bit easier to pick up my sentiment with tweezers and kind of position it that way. I just find that my fingers kind of get in the way when I'm trying to position it with those, and I don't get it lined up exactly how I want it. So it works a lot easier if you use tweezers to hang on to it. You're just able to see it a little bit better. So I adhered that sentiment on top, and then I decided that it was a little bit too flat. I wanted to have a little bit more dimension. So I cut the sentiment out of white cardstock 2 more times. And I'm just going to use a liquid glue pen and adhere the sentiments one on top of another until I have all 3 adhered to the card front. And this just gives a little bit dimension and just kind of gives it its own little shadow behind itself because it is kind of raised off the card. So I just thought that it added a little bit more emphasis to the card design and really made that sentiment pop off of the darker cardstock behind. So once I had that done, I decided I needed to stamp one more little leaf area in the bottom right corner. It just looked plain and empty, and it looked like it needed to have a stamped image there. So I took the smaller leaf image and I stamped that directly onto the panel, and I repeated the same process as before. I stamped it first with the white pigment ink, and then I layered over the persimmon dye ink, and then I added a little bit of detail stamping with the persimmon dye ink as well. And then that is going to complete the stamping on the panel. So now that I have that done, I've let it dry. I've let all that pigment ink completely dry on the panel. I'm going to adhere this directly onto a white top folding card base. This is a standard A2 size card, so it's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I didn't want to add any foam adhesive or anything to the card. I like that the sentiment kind of has a little bit of dimension from the layering that we did. And I thought that was the perfect amount of dimension on the card, so I decided to adhere this directly to the card base. And then just because it is a little bit more on the simple side and because I usually can't help it, I decided to add some sequins to the card design. I normally put them in a triangle formation on the card design, but for this one here, I kind of wanted them to kind of follow the pattern of the flowers. So I started in the right bottom corner and just kind of worked my way up towards the left-hand corner of the card, and then that's going to complete the design for today. So now it's your turn to take part. If you create a shadow stamped card, so do any type of shadow stamping on your card design, make sure to visit the coordinating blog post, which is linked in the description box down below, and link up your card. And if you participate in all 5 days of camp this week, you will be eligible for a $150 gift card to MFT Stamps. And you can also leave a comment on this video for a chance to win a $15 gift card to MFT Stamps. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and thank you so much for joining us all summer long for Camp Create. We can't wait to see what you guys create this week, and we will see you in the next video.